All right, very excited to have today's guest on. It's Dave Sims. You've heard him do a number of games. You've heard him do some UConn games this year. I'm sure you've heard him do baseball. You've heard him on the radio. You've seen him on TV. Dave, thank you so much for hopping on for a few minutes
You're
today.
very welcome. Good to talk to you. How you doing?
Good. I'm doing well, and I'm really excited to have you on. A big fan of your work, and
Appreciate
always
it.
excited to hear you on Big East games, especially when we got to hear you on some UConn games this year.
Well, it's not, it's my off season from baseball. I live in New York and it's great being back. I've been doing Big East games since '91 and it's definitely a great homecoming and see a lot of familiar faces. And I've reached a point now where a lot of guys who I covered when they were playing, Danny Hurley, Shaheen Holloway, come to mind immediately. They were players. And now here they are coaches and doing a hell of a job. And certainly a good time for Danny right now being number one, this week, which is fantastic.
Yeah, so let me start by you mentioned doing Big East basketball since the 90s. I know some of the teams in the league have changed, but how do you think of the Big East when you think about it in today's terms of what this league is like now?
Well, the number of teams a little bit different, and I certainly miss. I really miss having Syracuse, BC, Pitt, West Virginia in the conference. Those are always great places to go. It was always great places, great teams and programs to see over the years. So that's certainly a big change. But Creighton, Marquette, DePaul, Xavier, they bring a lot to the table. Good basketball traditions and good coaching too, and a lot of good players. So they, with the to go with the stalwarts in the original group, it's a good conference, and certainly last year Danny and those guys proved it be highly creditable by winning the national championship.
So when you've done a couple of these UConn games this year, what stood out to you about this team that you've gotten to see?
Well, the game I saw was certainly not a true test. I mean, Arkansas Pine Bluff, it was a paycheck game, but clearly the talent is extraordinary. And I know Klingon has had some problems with his lower extremities. I think one ankle and a foot and whatnot. But boy, when he's in there, he's a rim protector. And then Caravan's just an unconscious shooter. I mean, up and down the lineup, the depth, the athleticism, Danny's coaching, Danny's passion. It's a lot of fun, and it's a great package. It really is. And I enjoyed, what was it, a week, 10 days ago, to St. John's game
Yeah.
up there. That was a great game, and St. John's hung in there for the longest time. And, certainly Rick is doing a heck of a job out there here in New York with the Red Storm.
Yeah. When you talk about some of these other teams you've seen in the league, who else has impressed you from the teams you've gotten to see up close this year in the
I
conference?
was loving Providence until Hopkins got hurt. I did the
Yeah.
game, the Seton Hall game, where he got hurt. I did what was it, the ACL, left ACL. Was a shame. Uh, he was not having like a spectacular year, but he's still 15-8. And, he's a guy that's capable of probably doing 23-12. But just his presence alone physically, as an inside presence, a guy actually an inside outside presence, and it gave them a scoring option. And now they're down a scoring option. And now teams can really concentrate on Devin Carter, who's a dynamic player, a very fierce competitor. He's dramatically improved on his 3-point shot. I mean, he is a total hustle guy. Everybody should have a player like him that produces the way he does. He's all over the leaderboards in every offensive and defensive category. Josh Oduro does a nice job, in the 5 hole. He's kind of deliberate in the post, not real quick or anything, but he's a shot blocker, gives you good defense. But then, the other day when I had him, um, they didn't shoot well, and I thought there was a reluctance to shoot. It was against Xavier, and Xavier was trying to bounce back into a 2-game losing streak, which they did. And Providence, as we speak right now, has lost what, 3 or 4? I think it's 4 in a row now, and I think they're going to be in trouble. Kim English, terrific, wonderful guy, wonderful coach. If Providence, you got to do everything you can to keep him as long as possible. Young guy, um, with great basketball background and bona fides. I mean, he's been with great coaches. He was a terrific player at Missouri, so he brings the entire package. Like I said, this week I get Creighton, and I look forward to seeing them in person. I've always liked the way McDermott coaches, and having seen Shaheen with Seton Hall a couple of times, they were up 16 at Georgetown last week, led Georgetown back in the game, and then held them off with some really good defense. So there's a lot of good things to talk about in the league, no question about it.
I'm curious, given what you were mentioning earlier about having gotten to see both Danny and Shaheen as players and now seeing them as coaches. Are they like what they were like when they were players as you see them on the sideline now?
Hey man, they care, they're fierce, they know what they're doing, they're well schooled. They relate to the players, they're able to get the draw everything out of these players. And I think the player, I don't think there's any question about it. I think they like playing for them and for both of them. So I think terrific, a couple of young coaches and guys who, Big East lifers, and it's great to have them in the conference.
Speaking of a coaching lifer, you got Rick Pitino you mentioned earlier at St. John's. What are you thinking of the job that he's done there in New York in getting some buzz back to the Johnnies?
Well, I go back to Rick when he was Hubie Brown's assistant, then eventually became the coach at the Knicks, and I was doing the Knicks pregame show with Hubie and then with Rick, and certainly, and I've had him in the tournament, in the NCAA tournament multiple times when he was at Louisville. Hey, the guy's a Hall of Fame coach, and he's got a couple national championships, multiple trips. The whole resume. He can coach, and he basically he blew up the team. He flushed everybody but Soriano, and he's getting these guys from just different and disparate places in basketball to come together. And I think he's right. I think by mid late February, going into the tournament, they could be a force because it's a get to know you basis every game. I know they had a heartbreaker uh, on what was it
Yeah,
Saturday?
great.
Yeah, Saturday. Great because our game was on right after that, and I like I liked Rick's post game, uh, his presser, and somebody from out in Creighton kept pressing him, wanting him to say something about the refs, and he said, "He's not, nah, I got nothing. We missed the shot. We didn't defend. There's nothing to do with the referees." And I thought he was very funny. He banged out saying something about, "Hey, when I lose, I'm a miserable person. I want to kill myself. I'm ready to jump out in the lake. Hey, have a good day."
Yeah.
And I just, he's a veteran. He's been around forever, and he can coach. I mean, that's flat out. He can coach. So they're going to be good. And I'm really curious to see. I don't like to look too far ahead, but what is in the transfer portal for him, how the recruiting is going, how the NIL money is going for them. But because I think if you want to be get into the league in the NBA and you're a big time player, I know St. John's isn't a great campus and it's in there, it's a city school,
Yeah.
but in terms of like your basketball life, if you want to get schooled by somebody who knows what the heck he's talking about, that's a really good choice. And I think that would be a heck of a recruiting pitch to put out there to a lot of elite players.
I'm going to take a quick break from the interview to tell you about my friends at Martin Rosol's Meats. This fourth generation Connecticut family business produces kielbasa, hot dogs, sausages, and deli meats using Martin Rosol's very own original recipes. Their products can be found in grocery stores, delis, restaurants, and hot dog stands throughout the state. And if you're looking for your fill right away, check out their retail store in New Britain. For more information, visit martinroselsinc.com and go support a UConn fan owned business. And now, back to the interview. You talk about, the transfer portal, the name, image, likeness stuff. Again, you've been calling games for a while. How have you seen this college landscape change from when you started to where it is today?
Football and basketball coaches, the majority of them hate it, but that's the system and that's how these are the rules. And, it's the old Godfather line, Michael, this is the business we've chosen. So they got to deal. You got to compete. If you don't compete, you're going to be out. So, I don't, I can't give you stats and figures on what schools have what kind of money, but I think your audience can figure out who those people are. And it, it's gonna really start to surface. And the other thing, a lot of people say, where can the system go? That's a good question. I have no idea. A lot of stuff that was considered cheating 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago is now, right, boom, throw it right on the table. So that's where we are right now. And, a lot of the guys who are, the super talents, the elite guys that less than one percenters, a lot of those guys are going to be one and dones. And then hopefully you can build something that you can sustain. But the thing I hear from all the coaches, hey man, I got to re-recruit my own team. When the season's over, I think that's their greatest nightmare. And guys who are playing and may not be getting the play time they think they deserve. There's an, hey, I'm a switch. I'm gonna get out. And as I get ready for games, I'm writing down bios and putting my game boards together. I'm seeing guys who are at their second and third teams. I mean, it's totally unusual. Um, but that's a system they have now, so got to move forward.
You mentioned how you prep for games just a little bit there. I wanted to just get a little inside the game with you a little bit. What's the prep like as you're preparing? You said you did, I know, it was UConn, Arkansas, Pine Bluff. So take us through an example of like what that day is like getting you set for that
Yeah,
game.
well, in the old days, you used to have to wait for faxes that come through for SIDs. Now everything's online. I mean, I go to Basketball Reference and get pretty much everything I want. Then I go to school websites. Obviously, you got name, number, and pronunciation. You got to get that right. You got to get the stats, season, and the last game, that kind of stuff. What are the trends? Who's hot? Who's not? And then the other thing, we try to, if not day of, a day or two before, uh, get the coaches online. And I know a lot of these guys, and I'm at an age, and I think my status is such that guys will set up a time and they'll get on the horn with you. And you can talk, depending who it is, you can talk 5 minutes to a half hour.
Yeah.
And you pick up stuff from them, you get bio stuff from them, who's, little things, hey, what should I look for? Who's your go-to guy? Um, who do you trust with the ball? Who's your best rebounder? That kind of stuff. And then you augment that with the SID, try to get some background information on players. If there's, I always like to look to see if there's any uh, athletic connections,
Mhm.
father, uncle, grandfather, that kind of stuff, mom, sister, whatever, and just any kind of human interest story that you can weave in. Now, you don't have a whole lot of time to weave it in. I
Yeah.
mean, the game's going fast. You don't have time to get it. Back in third grade, meanwhile, the ball's
Yeah.
going up and down 3 times. You don't have time to do that. But it's nice to have. And sometimes you can just work it in when a kid gets to the foul line. But the main thing is, when people tune in, they want to see the game. What's the score? How much time is left? How's this game affect the standings? Um, what's going to be the end result? What could be the end result? What are the ramifications of team A winning and losing and team B winning and losing? That's what people are looking for.
Yeah. When it comes to doing a college basketball game versus a baseball game, is that time you have to get into some of those more human interest type
A little
things
bit,
that
given
take a
given the nature of baseball, it's a little bit slower. I mean, I don't go full thin Scully. I don't, God rest his soul, his eminence. He was a wonderful person and obviously a great broadcaster. And nobody weaved the story. There's a lot of great guys in baseball, but nobody weaved the story like he did. But even there, especially now with the pitch clock, you don't have a whole lot of time to be going into a long story. Maybe want to set it up. You know, hey, such and such happened.
Mhm.
Get to the payoff, and then color it as you go through. Low, because you don't have time to go. From A, as a narrative going, A, B, C, D. I like to go Z and then go back to G, H, and then maybe back to A. Or actually you throw it at A, something happened, and then
Yep.
and then fill in the gaps. You just don't have time. You have to be quick. It's almost like stand-up comics. I mean, it's the principle of three. I mean, you don't want to, you set it up, and you pay it off, and then move on.
I've got a couple to wrap with here. UConn fans will like what you said about the team at the first part, but they're probably not going to like this question here and having to relive this moment. But I know you were on the call for UConn George Mason, so I've
Oh
got to
God,
ask.
that was unreal.
I've got to ask what it was like to be a part of that game.
I until Felix Hernandez threw his perfect game until Cal Raleigh hit a home run to get the Mariners in the playoffs. That was and I've been lucky prior to that. But that was the most fun, most dramatic moment I had in my broadcasting career. So Westwood One Radio nationally, working with the late great Dave Gavitt, the father of the Big East. Connecticut was a juggernaut that year. George Mason, who the hell are they? Where'd they come from? How did this happen? And Mason made a hell of a run. Connecticut comes back, looked like they were going to put it away, and then it comes down to those last couple of shots. And I remember going to a break, timeout, Connecticut, the score, blah, 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 blah. And I turned to coach. I said, Coach, I'm hyperventilating. I said, I remember from Lamar's class, I got to remember how the breathing, to get myself back to normal, get that pulse back down a little bit. That's how exciting it was. And you could feel the building. It was, what is now the Cap One Center in
Yeah.
DC. And you could feel the building breathing. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, and the George Mason people, obviously, they're flipping. I think we might beat these guys, and the Connecticut people are flipping out like we can lose. This is crazy. We're trying to get to the Final Four. So that's what it was like. I mean, I think I'm trying to remember what I said something because I remember I was Amtrakking home, and they played my last call something one of the greatest upsets in the upsets for the ages, yada yada yada, that kind of stuff. That was an amazing moment. But you know what? There's nothing for you Connecticut people to cry about. I mean, you got 5 championships in the last what 20? What was your first
20
championship?
Yeah, yeah,
99.
yeah, 99. Yeah.
Yeah, you
So
got 5 titles since '99. So I don't want to hear it. I mean, the Mariners have been to one playoff in 17 years. The Cubs have won one World Series in 100 years. I don't complain to me. I don't want to hear it. Not buying it. Not buying it at all. You're having a great run.
yes, yes, no ill words about the run that UConn basketball has been on for the past couple decades here. I'll wrap with this one. I know you used to do some Big East football. Maybe as
Yeah,
conference realignment gets things funky again, would you be up for some more Big East football? Maybe bring that back?
yeah, I would love it. I don't see it happening. I mean, because uh, Pitt and Syracuse and Pitt and Syracuse and
Yeah,
ACC, right? Who's in the Big Ten, and the Temple's program is about, if it hasn't fallen off the cliff, it's about to. Um, who else? Virginia Tech and ACC. I mean, all the old crew is gone. I enjoyed the heck out of it. I did a big break in my broadcasting career, in addition to WNBC, but I did Temple football.
yeah,
What was that? 89, was it? 90, 91, 92. Yeah, 90, 91, 92. Then I did Big East, the Big East, ESPN regional Big East game of the week, 93-4. Then again from like 98 to 07. So I've seen a lot of really good players, a lot of great games. A lot of West Virginia had some great teams. McNabb was at, matter of fact, Syracuse hasn't been the same since McNabb graduated.
yeah.
Um, BC used to put out some good teams. Do I see it getting back together? No way, no how. But I had an unbelievable run working with those folks. Met a lot of good people.
I lied. I've got one more. I'll end with this one because I like when people who are doing games going city to city. I've got to ask favorite Big East city to visit.
Well, I live in New York, so we won't count that. The current Big East.
Yeah.
Um, well, I haven't done a DePaul game out there in a while, but I know from being out there for baseball is great. But I'm out there during the summertime, so I'll say DC.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's there's good eats down there. I've done the tourist thing. Matter of fact, separate from some hoop games when my wife and I spent a week down there catching up on tourist things that we hadn't done in the past with the kids. So that was cool.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I would say that. I mean, everything else, great people in Providence. People don't understand how good an atmosphere that is in Providence and when they're going, especially when they're going well.
Yeah.
That's a tough place to play, and they are fully throated behind it. Obviously, I can't leave out my hometown, Philadelphia. I mean, obviously for me, that's like double bonus for me if I get a chance to do Villanova games, and I get to go down and see my brother, and go down and see some of the old crowd. So I would say those are the favorites.
All right. Well, Dave, I really appreciate you taking a few minutes to come on, talk some hoops in your career there. Really appreciate it. If you get on another UConn game, we got a big Caravan shot at the buzzer. I want a hey now out of you on that next broadcast.
That kid can shoot it. He's got the ugliest rotation on the ball that goes in all the time. It's unbelievable. First time I remember seeing him, I guess it was last year. I saw him at one point. Yeah, I had Connecticut St. John's last year up at Hartford, and a most unusual rotation. But the end result is just absolutely beautiful. And
Yeah.
he's what we like to call a keeper. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
he
a
is. He
great
is.
player. Yeah, he's a difference maker, no doubt.
Awesome. Well, Dave, I appreciate it. And thanks so much for coming on.
You bet. Good to see you. Take care of yourself.
Thanks. You too.